you have people now like Jeff Flake and at least John McCain and all of his attention whoredom can actually make the case that occasionally, once in a blue moon, like he just did a couple weeks ago, he actually did oppose a right-wing onslaught with a vote. Okay? Jeff Flake has done nothing. He has a completely non-distinguished far-right career. The weekend after voting for the skinny repeal to take away people's health insurance, to plunge millions of lives into ruin, which would lead to deaths, which would lead to bankruptcies, which would lead to destroyed families. He didn't go back to Arizona and face his constituents. He was at a Koch brothers retreat. The sole purpose of him being in public life is to give people like the Koch brothers money and power, of which they already have a seemingly unlimited supply. But his brand is to go on Meet the Press and right conscience of a conservative and say that the issue isn't the structural economic abuses that he wants to inflict on a vast majority of this country. It's that we need to do it, but we need to do it in a nice way. And here he is talking about the Republican Party, how it was such a bummer that they didn't more strongly call out birtherism when it was happening.
We've seen more people ready to stand up, and I wish that we as a party would have stood up, for example, when the birtherism thing was going along. A lot of people did stand up, but not enough.
Did you do enough?
That was particularly ugly.
I'm just curious, do you?
On that, I think I did.
Yeah.
But on other things as well. I mean, when our party, I wonder, during rallies, when the chants lock her up, we shouldn't be the party for jailing your political opponents. And anybody at that rally, anybody at those rallies ought to stand up and say, that's inappropriate. We shouldn't be doing that. And I wish we as a party and elected officials would do more of that. Or when particularly ugly conspiracy theories go out, or simply fake news, stuff that is just demonstrably false, we ought to stand up and say, hey, that's just not right.
Demonstrably false, like there is a weapons of mass destruction program in Iraq that threatens all of us that happened during the Bush administration. Demonstrably false that massive tax giveaways to top-end earners will benefit middle-class and working-class people. Demonstrably false that there's nothing that we can do through government action to confront the climate crisis and all of the areas that you vote to reward the plutocracy in this country. Now, Jeff Flake was a holdout on endorsing Donald Trump. As of September of the election, he was still refusing to do it. If you could look up Matt, I don't know if he eventually did actually flip and formally endorse him. But this notion, and bear in mind that the birtherism thing, which Jeff Flake did criticize at the time, but he didn't say in the 2012 election, hey, Mitt Romney, you need to immediately disavow Donald Trump's endorsement because Donald Trump is the sort of national face of resurgent racism. What did he say about the fake news with the endless Benghazi conspiracies that targeted Hillary Clinton? What did he say about that?
Yeah, the idea that it's the lock her up chant and not the bullshit investigations.
Not the endless use of congressional resources to create a fake scandal. And then the other reality for someone like this, which is that there is no normal voters in your agenda, dude. None. Maybe there's a handful of upper-end used car dealers in Arizona that fall within the brackets where you'll give them a tax giveaway. And by the way, they've proven by voting for Trump that they don't give a fuck about racism or sexism or the politics of personal destruction. They could care less. That was the delusion that the idiots running the Hillary campaign had. Oh, these people will find that so tasteless that they won't vote to give themselves tax giveaways. Those voters will vote, ironically, their class interest, their limited class interest every single time. And then the other people that you get out to vote for this stuff, it's going to be mainly on social, nativist, and bigoted issues. So where do you fit? because there's no normal person of any variety that's excited for the Koch brothers scam. And I think that that's part of the time we're in politically, that like the muscle behind that kind of politics is going to get a lot more bare, because I think some of the delusions, particularly some younger, overall, if you look at the polling of younger people, there's much greater skepticism of the libertarian neoliberal fantasies we've been living under. And that means that there's more voter suppression. There's more just raw uses of political power.
By Sinclair?
By Sinclair, exactly. But there'll always be room for someone like Jeff Flake on boring, irrelevant, stuffy news shows to come out. And of course, the problem isn't destroying people's health care. The problem isn't increasing poverty. The problem isn't structurally reducing our democracy to a sort of competitive bidding system. The problem isn't doing nothing about the environment. The problem isn't pushing more corporate-backed trade deals, which Jeff Flake said, because some people have asked him, he said, why, if you're criticizing Trump, have you been voting for all of his nominations and voting to push his agenda through? And he said, well, mainly most of these votes are just sort of personnel votes. So I don't know what that point is. Yes, I would assume that if you think the president is a menace, you might vote against some of his personnel. But of course, Jeff Flake supports his personnel, because Jeff Flake supports the far-right plutocracy government that Trump has in place, just minus some of the Twitter whining. And then he said a place in the future we might vote against Trump would be on trade deals. And of course, that's taking at face value that Trump meant anything he said about reining in trade, when of course we all know that actually Trump is in the process of negotiating bilateral trade deals, which are in fact even worse potentially than what came before. I'm sure Jeff Flake will vote for those. But there'll be endless time for him to be the nice guy conservative, even as his core purpose and position in public life is to be a bagman for some of the most regressive, dangerous, powerful, ruthless, cruel, crazy, and demented people on the planet.
Maybe I should read Jeff Flake's book before I say this, but
Jesus.
The Conscience of a Conservative is after the Barry Goldwater book, which basically sent us down this shitty path to begin with 50 years ago.
And the conscience of a conservative did not preclude Barry Goldwater from. In fact, the conscience of the conservative is what helped him vote against the Civil Rights Act.
Right. So
Yes.
maybe Flake nods at there's some incongruity here with what we, but I really doubt it.
Doubt it.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos